We're recording.
Well, welcome everybody. Today is April 21st, and we're visited by Dr. Andrea Connally and Dr. Kaminsky. Again, thank you for having this, and Dr. Connally, thank you for being a part and being a speaker today. Also, thank you for everybody else that's joining in and listening in on these conversations. And just a little bit about Andrea is that Andrea Connally is an Extension Program Educator at the Oklahoma State University. Her research focuses on integrated pest management of turfgrass disease and pesticide management, identifying changes in cultural management and best management practices for the turfgrass industry. Dr. Connally's academic achievements began as a microbiology major at Oklahoma State University. From there, Dr. Connally graduated from Tulane's School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine with a master's degree in epidemiology, studying the SARS outbreak of 2012 and chronic health outcomes associated with pesticide exposure. Dr. Connally completed her PhD in 2017, examining a leaf spot complex in warm season turfgrass species. The primary industry Dr. Connally focuses on is roadside vegetation management, working directly with the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. Dr. Connally's work also focuses on the fine turfgrass sector, which includes home lawns, golf courses, and sod production. Those areas of research may include herbicide screenings, germplasm evaluations for aesthetics, and disease tolerance. Please welcome Dr. Payne Connally. And thank you again for joining us today.
All right, Andrea, thank you very much for joining the Turf Club virtual thing that we have here. What I'm going to do is just briefly tell everybody that's in the attendees here. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A section. Try to avoid putting it in the chat, because sometimes if it gets chatty, we lose kind of sight of the questions that you may have. If questions come up, I'll interrupt Dr. Payne Connally and ask her. And hopefully we'll be able to address everything. And with that, I'm going to go dark and silent so my internet's not pulling video, and turn it over to you, Andrea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you guys so much for the invitation. You know, whenever John asked me to do this over Twitter, because that's pretty much how professional networking is done nowadays, it seems like. He asked me if I would be willing to do kind of the women in the turfgrass industry and some of their challenges and opportunities, and kind of jumped at it. And so first, just kind of on the welcome screen, if you guys haven't read them already, these are quotes, and these are recent quotes for the most part, you know, dating first in 49, whenever no woman has ever entered the clubhouse, and pray God, no woman ever will. And that was from Royal Liverpool's club secretary in 49. You know, later in 2012, and they hosted the Women's British Open and the 2012 Summer Olympics. So sorry to a secretary, but obviously women are allowed in the clubhouse now. You know, and going back even more recently, she's probably thinking, if this goes in, I get a new kitchen. Peter Ayles remarking about Kim Johnson while watching her husband putt for the win. And then 2012, Fox and Friends, Brian Kilmeade, women are everywhere. We're letting them play golf and tennis now, to which my response has typically been, you know, thanks guys, we appreciate it.
Can I just say that reading those quotes is like so painful?
It is, it's scary. It's really scary, and it's even worse whenever you realize like that's not that long ago. And you know, Brian Kilmeade he said some interesting things about women on about a weekly basis. So he's kind of a gem for that type of stuff. Anyways. And so disclaimer, I think for anything kind of like this, I do need to add this little disclaimer box. This is a hot topic issue. I do promise. You know, I likely will mention topics that'll make you uncomfortable. Part of that is good, honestly. It's either, you know, identifying things that you have done maybe in the past or have seen other people do. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you're less likely to do it in the future. And, you know, we'll key in on some just little things and then, you know, kind of the big obvious things that you don't do later. In no way is this meant to degrade anybody. I'm going to be talking about personal things that I've had to deal with being a woman in turf, both the good and the bad, and kind of how I've overcome some of my own challenges and kind of stepped foot into my own opportunities. And these are just my experiences. This is by absolutely no means universal to the entire industry. I really cannot speak and am not speaking for all women in turfgrass. It's just literally just me and my experiences. And so if you guys are questioning how I got into turfgrass, it was strictly and totally by accident. There was nothing planned in it. For you guys are coming out of this with a BS in turf management. I left my bachelor's degree in microbiology, where I, you know, studied pathogens, and that's what I knew I wanted to do ever since the 8th grade. That's what I wanted to do as a PhD, and I wanted to study pathogens. And so there I went into epidemiology. I loved and still love studying pathogens. It's what I do. It is my passion. If you watch Outbreak, it is one of the most laughable movies I have ever seen in my life. PPE does not function that way. In a BSL-4 lab, those the jumpsuits that they wear will not rip because you hit them on the edge of a counter. In fact, those counters are rounded. Like it just is, it's impossible. If you want a more realistic look, Contagion is a little bit more accurate. Kate Winslet's position is actually a postdoc at the CDC, and I had several friends that actually did that. From there, part of my master's, I had to do a 200-hour internship. And about the time towards the end of that master's, I realized that I didn't like working with people as a test subject. Getting people to complete surveys is incredibly difficult, and doing that for the rest of my life was kind of the least entertaining thing I could ever do. And so I came back to Oklahoma State to visit a friend, ended up talking with Dr. John Damicone, who's a vegetable pathologist here at OSU. And I got hooked up with him and started doing a 200-hour internship looking at aflatoxin occurrence in peanuts, particularly in Haiti, to develop a model for that situation. And so then that dovetailed me into getting my MS in entomology and plant pathology with Dr. Damon Smith, who at the time was working in turfgrass and horticultural crops. You know, during that time, we developed the dollar spot model. We looked at some other models in pecan scab. And so I was definitely using all of those epidemiology tools that I had learned. And then for my PhD, I decided to shift and I got into turfgrass. And so there was no plan or rhyme or reason. And now I deal with all turfgrass as long as it's not rangeland and pasture. And so that's me. That's how I got into turf. And kind of my storyline, and that'll play later on into, you know, some of my own challenges and opportunities. But to get specifically into the golf industry, I think everybody knows who this is. You know, if I dropped this picture in the middle of Times Square, most people in Times Square would probably know who this is. You know, we all know Tiger Woods. And John, I'm going to need you here in a second. Anybody know who this is?
I'm checking to see if anybody raises their hand or.
If anybody knows, this is an old one, but you know, this is the Tiger Woods of the LPGA.
Somebody says. Tina Bond said Dustin Hoffman dressed as a woman.
This is not Tootsie. Great movie, but this is definitely not Tootsie. Okay,
yeah, nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Okay.
I have to admit, I don't know either.
This is Kathy Whitworth. And so Tiger Woods has the punch, and this is probably one of my favorite pictures of Kathy Whitworth. She was kind of a tour de force within the LPGA. She did 88 LPGA tourneys, 6 major championships. She was the lead scorer 7 times, and she was the captain of the Solheim Cup in 1990 and 92. So this is somebody that has definitely seen their days and their eras. And so, you know, if you want to talk about women in turf, ultimately what you end up having to talk about, and you can't really get around the discussion point is sexism. You know, we all know who Tiger Woods was, but absolutely nobody knows who Kathy Whitworth is. And granted, there's a little bit of time. Tiger's still playing, Kathy, you know, long retired. I want to say she passed away a few years ago. And so, you know, there is that time difference that you have to, you know, play around with as well. But this is a study that was done in 2018, and I actually got the image from the Washington Post, who did this, but this was just kind of a geographic design of sexism as it is in the United States. And you can see it's more heavily concentrated in kind of the Southeast and in the South, which you'd kind of expect. We value tradition very heavily in the South, including traditional male and female roles within the household. And that even, you know, it harks back into job opportunities. That traditional female role from the 1950s and 1940s was women were, and my mom will attest to this every single day of her life, you became a nurse, you were a teacher, a housewife, or a secretary. And those were your 4 options, really, whenever it came to work. And so the idea of women going into the legal field or becoming doctors and dealing with blood and guts and patients, you know, women couldn't do that because we would all pass out because we were dainty little flowers. You know, and that couldn't be further from the truth. But the idea of a woman, you know, digging up irrigation line, which I get to do next week, and getting muddy and gross and disgusting was just, you know, a thought that just never really occurred to people. And so in 1994, there's a woman called Women, Careers, Issues, and Changes. It's 11 chapters where they identified individual things. And this is a study that actually happened in Kansas, so not too far north. It was actually in Wichita, which is about an hour and a half north of me. And what they saw were women's perceptions of technology in the workplace. In general, women didn't handle it quite as well, or that was the idea, relied on it too heavily. You know, the struggles between work-family balance, that's something that we're still dealing with now, and I'll touch on later. Salary satisfaction, we've all heard that one. You know, we know that women are not paid as much as men. The idea of the 2-earner household was a recent phenomena in the early 1940s, you know, and this is the height of golf, as it were. Childcare, we're still dealing with those issues. You know, and the big one that you don't really think about quite as much, but does become a much bigger issue, is the role that alcohol plays in professional lives. You know, if you go to any conference in the entire world, it feels like, you will drink, you will have beer, and there will be alcohol. If you know, we had a Women in Turf meeting at the Tri-Society in November. We had it at a wine bar, and there was a lot of wine that was consumed, and it was good. The work hard, play hard attitude was generally found in men, whereas women had the work hard, play little. You know, we work 8 to 10 hours a day, and then you go home and you put on motherhood hat and you work in that job. And so, you know, those are the things that they were dealing with that were identified in the early 1990s, you know, and not all of them deal directly with the turf industry, but most of them do. And so one of the things that we've had to deal with as women in the turf industry is this whole no golf for you. And those Seinfeld lovers will understand the reference there. But in Augusta, there were no female membership until 2012. They have 3. Pebble Beach, 1990. Your Field Golf Club, July of 2019. And the only reason is because they were denied hosting the British Open in 2016, specifically because they barred female membership. The initial vote that happened in 2016 actually failed. 64% voted yes, 2/3 was required to overturn it, which means 66% plus 1. So the vote failed, and they were banned from hosting the British Open until they changed their minds. Bruntsfield, Links Golfing Society, 2018. St. Andrews, kind of the birthplace of golf, as it were, 2014. And that golf course was built during the reign of Mary Queen of Scots, who also coined the term caddy. You know, fun fact. Old Elm in Chicago, I am banned. Butler National, I am banned. Same thing with Burning Tree. I am also banned. And honestly, even at Augusta, without push from the PGA, US Open, Ryder Cup, etc., the possibility of these lost profits, nothing would have changed, ever. I can almost guarantee that. Even Augusta cited that the lost membership or the lost revenue from the Masters would have caused them to change significantly. Their membership fees at Augusta are almost nothing because they're offset so much by the Masters. All right, John, need you one more time. All right, so speaking of the Ryder Cup, it is being hosted by Whistling Straits this year, if they're allowed to host it. Hopefully they are. It's a gorgeous golf course, and they're moving the sheep for the for tournament play. But who designed Whistling Straits? Curious if anybody knows this fun fact.
I'm monitoring, paying attention.
Do you know this one, John?
I do know this one because I've had several interns there. And I don't want to give it away, but there was a reason why
We on a negative on this one again?
Isn't this a Pete Dye? Pete Dye quote?
Half right and half wrong.
Huh.
You are half right. You're missing the other half, though. And this is something special. You have to understand the relationship of the dyes. But this one was actually Pete and Alice Dye. And it really does depend on which reference you look at. If you look at their website, it just says Pete Dye. But if you look pretty much anywhere else, it says Alice and Pete Dye or Pete and Alice Dye. With the dyes, wherever Pete was, so was Alice. And wherever Alice was, so was Pete. And that's just kind of how their working relationship worked. Within golf construction, Alice won way more awards, way more awards. She was the first female president of their society as well. Pete won the Grand Kahuna Award, and I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head. But whenever it comes to individual awards, his wife actually outshined her. In fact, the two T system, so we have male, female, and now senior tee-offs, that was developed by Alice Dye. And it's not something that, generally we teach too much, that little bit of history. But if you look at the golf courses that either have Alice as a solo or even Pete as a solo, just know that those two were always involved with one another. But that was the era. The husband got the credit, even though in reality, behind every husband, there is a strong wife back behind that. And they were kind of the perfect example of that. And so kind of with that, some of the challenges within the turf as a whole, and I know I kind of stomp on golf a little bit, just because it's a little bit easier. But golf in particular, it still feels a bit more like a boys' club. And it is a very much male-dominated field. The vast majority of golfers are still men. But, even going into some of these Zoom meetings, since we've had this COVID outbreak and having to go to that, I've been able to do a lot more continuing education. In one of those meetings, there were 17 participants. It was a great meeting. I was the only woman present, and there were no female presenters. It's even more stark whenever you go into roadside, where we may have anywhere between 400 to 600 roadside applicators at a conference that we host. I am maybe one of 3 or 4 total. Again, no female presenters. So, in the sod industry, it's a little bit different because most sod companies are family owned and operated, or at least in Oklahoma they are. So it is husband, wife, sons, daughters, grandchildren that kind of take on that role. And so it's a little bit more equal within the sod, but if you look at who's heading it, who is the head and face of that sod farm, it's typically the husband. And that's going to be pretty traditional within kind of that agronomic situation. Sales reps that I work with, very, very heavily male. At this time, none of my sales reps that I contact, whether it be in roadside or in fine turf, are male. I used to have 2 female sales reps. One left because of family. concerns, and then another left for other opportunities. She wanted to move to a different company in a different area of expertise. But I don't work with any female sales reps. There's also a feeling that I need to know my stuff twice as much in order to be taken as seriously as the others. And I don't necessarily kind of throw that into the misogyny pool. I really don't. You know, I've only had my PhD for 2-3 years. You know, I'm kind of the new kid on the block, and you know, I just don't have my teeth in the game quite as much as somebody like, you know, John does. But, you know, it does pose a specific set of questions. There are golf courses where I am banned from joining and even being present, and God forbid, in the clubhouse. So let's say I was the pathologist in Wisconsin, which the Wisconsin pathologist is male, so it's not a big deal. But can I do a site visit at, say, Butler National, where I'm banned? You know, do you as a female student want to work there, where you know you're just going to, you know, there's only going to be men, and you're even barred from playing that golf course in theory as an employee, and part of that employee benefit, you can't play. Should I expect the same recognition for what I do? You know, there's kind of the pros and cons of having doctor in front of your name. You're seen as an expert when, you know, I know my project and my PhD extremely well. Everything else, you know, maybe not so much. But do I need to require people to address me as Dr. Payne Connally in order to force that expertise on other individuals? Or does forcing the issue make it worse due to A, my age, or B, my gender? There are some people out there who do not feel that women should have doctorates and have PhDs. For some reason, it you know, escapes their mind. You know, can I be expected to be properly regarded if employed at one of these golf courses that bans female members? And do you, you know, as a potential, you know, like let's say John, for example, who does send out students to be interns, does he
Sorry, I jumped out of there. My power went out in my house, like the wind's so strong around here, and then I couldn't fit it back in. Anyway, I'm glad that you're still going and it's recording, so I'll let you go ahead.
Okay, I didn't even notice that you were out. But you know,
I was trying to help with the question about Pete and Alice Dye, and then all of a sudden it like bounced on me, so that's what happened.
Oh, okay. So even though, John, since you're unmiked, let me ask you this question, just kind of as a back and forth. You know, at golf courses where they do ban female membership, do you put those golf courses for your female students as places where they should intern, or do you kind of move them past and get them into a different golf course?
Where they ban female golf, but they don't ban female employees? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I guess I would say first, I've had very limited number of female students in the program, right? There's not a high percentage. That's a good question. I think it would be very hard to send a student or recommend that a female student, go work at a place where the membership does not value having female members there. I mean, I don't ever stop somebody from doing whatever they want if somebody said they wanted to do it, but it seems to me that would be maybe not the best situation to put them in, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know I mean, it's kind of a personal thing. If you feel like swan diving right into that, you know, well, good on you. I personally don't know if I would go someplace else, because that's kind of the rarity nowadays.
Yeah, and I think that out of all the clubs that do not allow female members, I think Butler National might be the only one that I've ever sent interns to.
Yeah.
Well, there's not that many clubs that don't do it anymore, so it's tough to say. But.
And they're kind of off the beaten path. They're in those incredibly affluent areas that can charge an arm and a leg. So really, there's no financial push, like, you know, PGA or US Open or hosting any of those big tournaments that would really push them to do that. I don't know. It's kind of one of those, you know, what if type things. But, you know, even being, you know, what if I was a state specialist up there? What do you do? You know, am I allowed on there as a state specialist on that golf course? You know, that's a question. I would probably have to talk to the head of extension the dean of extension, whether or not I would be able to do that. But it does kind of bring into professional etiquette For some reason, there are people that don't quite, since it is male dominated, what happens when you have your first female employee that comes on board, whether, as a coworker or, you hiring, a female employee, what do you do? Treat them just like everybody else. There's just kind of normal professional etiquette, and John has seen me enough to know that I'm kind of an open book. For a lot of those things, but just normal professional etiquette. If you want to share jokes, share memes, sports, whatever. If you want to discuss Tiger King, being an Oklahoman, obviously that's, I've literally got a trial 2 miles away from that, from the Tiger King zoo. It's the GW Zoo or something along those lines, literally 2 miles away. So yeah, he's well known, and trust me, it is as funny and sad as the documentary made it feel like, if you have seen that. But just kind of establishing that line that you do or don't cross, just like you would with anybody that you work with. Personally, I think poop and fart jokes are hilarious, especially if they're dog fart jokes, for whatever reason. A guy that I worked with until here recently, he thought that was the most juvenile thing that could ever happen, and that was just a line that I didn't cross. So it's not really that big of a deal whenever it kind of comes into those contexts, or into that context. When working with female employees, we are not dainty flowers. And that's kind of where I think a lot of kind of this misogyny idea comes into play, is that there's compensation issues, and it's not just money. So you may give somebody insanely easy tasks with this idea of, and I've actually had this told to me by a work colleague before, I didn't want to ruin your manicure. And, just so everybody knows, I do have a manicure. I have dragon nails. And I do have acrylic on them, and I do know what I do. I've ripped up turf sod with these things. They are dangerous weapons. Don't ever mention somebody's manicure as a reason for not giving them a job, or not giving them a harder task. That one just flies misogyny, like right in the face. And it's very detrimental. And it's, if you want to irk me, that's a really good way to irk me. But the other thing is too, it's, if you wanted to give somebody a task that they could handle, and whether or not, well, you're not as strong as the guys are. So I gave you something a little bit easier that you could tackle. That's kind of some of the stuff that I've even come across with as well. Or I've also had people give me more demanding tasks than my male counterparts, because I wanted to, quote, help you prove that you were worth your worth, and that you could do the things that the guys could do. That doesn't help. This whole idea of, I am doing you a favor, it just doesn't work at all. And you have to wonder how much of that exists within the turf industry, on the whole. And so taking it into the COVID-19 case study on this exact same issue, and I'm not really sure how many people saw it, but there were French doctors that they have this experimental treatment, and one doctor in particular decided that testing it in Africa would be the best. The medical infrastructure in Africa, and let's be honest, we're talking sub-Saharan Africa here. We're not talking Morocco and Egypt and some of those more northern areas. And we're also not talking about South Africa. But the medical infrastructure is much more rural. It's outpatient based. There are far, far fewer beds. And patient turnover with this new drug could be faster, helping to free up more necessary resources for more patients. Because babies are still being born, and people still get sick. People have heart attacks. People have scrapes and bruises and broken bones that need to be fixed. So on the whole, you would think to yourself, that sounds really helpful. That's a doctor trying to, do the Hippocratic Oath well, and they're helping in general. So this was the exact quote. If I could be provocative, should we not do the study in Africa where there are no mass treatments or intensive care? We try things because we know that they are highly exposed and they don't protect themselves. And that's the exact quote from this doctor. Number one, this statement is patently false. Africa, as a continent, has had to deal with far deadlier epidemics in the last 10 years than France alone has had to deal with in the last 100. You know, in the Congo and kind of in that area of Africa, Ebola outbreak occurred not that long ago, a few years ago. And I want to say, I think there's a new one that's might be starting up now, but about every 5 to 10 years, there's an Ebola outbreak. Kills hundreds and hundreds of people. And so these are the numbers that I pulled off the Johns Hopkins website on the 13th. So, you know, about a week ago. So things could have dramatically changed. But in France at the time, there were 138,000 known cases with 15,000 deaths and about 25,000 cases. Generally, what they were seeing was an increased number of cases identified that they were working with. In Senegal, which is a former French colony, there were a grand total of roughly 300 known cases, two deaths, with 111 active cases. And in general, the rate of the number of cases that we were seeing was decreasing. France's infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, either has or is starting to crumble because of this virus. And so the question remains, who really actually needs this treatment? Who would be better served with this treatment? It's not Africa getting hit with pincushions. The World Health Organization corrected the doctor after a massive amount of public backlash due to that, and just kind of harking back to that colonial mentality. But the defense is he just wanted to help. The doctor has since apologized for his comments. He thought he was doing something good. But in reality, what he was doing was incredibly racist. And you know, now that we look at it, you know, with a fuller lens, we can see how racist that was. And the same thing happens either in dealing with female employees or working with female employees. The same type of thing can happen, and it comes off, instead of obviously racism, it comes off as misogyny, and you just have to be very careful of that. And so one of the single biggest challenges, if we're looking over kind of this whole idea, it's overcoming this whole idea of golf equals a male sport. The idea that women don't want to get dirty. I can tell you, for me personally, I played mud football growing up in mud soccer. I thought it was the most fun thing to go out and get dirty and gross with the boys. And I was definitely a tomboy. If you Google a female golfer and you look at videos, you end up finding interviews with family life. How do you get by raising your children? Beauty. Golf.com did the 100 most beautiful women in golf. The same has not been done for the men of golf. And you also get fashion. And part of that was because LPGA, they changed their rules up. And so I think that's why we were seeing a little bit more fashion, but you always see like, this is the new sport fashion of golf, which is kind of ridiculous.
I'll just chime in and say, I just Googled it, and the first thing that pops up is all the images, right? It doesn't even give you like a website or any like thing about, you know, female golfers. It's just images, right? So like they're just trying to project this beauty. And then when you finally get to where the websites are listed, the first one's Men Health, 20 hottest women in golf, and then Awesome Jelly, whatever the heck that is, 49 hottest female golfers of all time, and then LPGA.com.
Yeah, it's like super low. And in fact, if you go to Instagram, it's even scarier. You start getting kind of LPGA changed their rules with the plunging neckline, which I totally agree with, because I'll be the first to admit, whenever I see a female golfer who has a massive amount of cleavage exposed, I have a tendency to look at it. And I don't really pay attention to her golf swing quite as much because there's boobage in my face. So I actually agree with that rule entirely. That rule change was very smart. And I don't know, maybe that rule change will take away some of that, where you have like 100 hottest female golfers. But John, if you do a male golfer or Google male golfer, and you look at the videos, you start looking at technical aspects. They're looking at their swing. How do you deal with the follow through? How do you deal with the putt game? You start looking at equipment, and so obviously peeing is a big player. And so you'll see guys that are, this is the new peeing golf course, and it's kind of a more traditional route that you would see with sponsorships, and just kind of more technical games, technical aspects of the game itself. And so kind of, to me at least, besides kind of that sexist attitude, or it's not really so much sexist, but hypersexualization of the game itself and of the athletes themselves, there is an idea of perception of what golf industry is and what the turf industry is as a whole, that I think we're going to have to overcome. And this is something, we're talking 10, 20, 30 years down the line, I think, before we can really start seeing a lot of these changes. But this whole idea and perception of it being a boys club, the golf.com sexiest golf players, female golf players, isn't helping anything. I don't want to go into an industry or to a sport as a professional where my body is viewed for what it is, as, something sexy and pretty for guys to look at and fondle. That's not what I do. And that's not what I want to do. And in reality, if you talk to most female golfers, they don't want that either. They just want to go out and play golf because they enjoy it. And so we'll see if this GIF works. Hopefully it does. It was working on my computer earlier, and then I tried it and it decided not to. It probably doesn't work. Okay, so this perception is that guys run around in golf carts playing golf all day. Golf superintendents really don't. They don't play golf all day. They're busy working and busy delegating and fixing stuff and mechanics and dealing with irrigation systems and trying to deal with some guy said something wrong and irked somebody else. They're dealing with those day-to-day tasks, and they're not golfing. They're working 10, 12-hour days. In general, and anybody can argue with me if they want to, but in general, they take their jobs, wherever you are in the turf industry, their job is taken very, very seriously. However, individually, you might not take yourself too seriously. It's very relaxed. It's very laid back. This isn't the corporate world where you may have those highly aggressive personalities, whether male or female. They typically don't work out too well. You kind of look at them and go, okay, and move on with life. And part of that comes into this, phenomena that happen. You get 8 inches of rain, and golf ball sized hail, and you've got a tournament tomorrow. What do? You just kind of and the GIF's great. If you guys haven't seen it, it fits in really well. But he does a swan dive, and then he lands in a hot tub, and is just kind of chilling and relaxing in the hot tub. And that's kind of what the turf industry kind of feels like. You jump headlong into it, and you do absolutely everything you can to produce whatever result, the best result that you're trying to. And then once it's done, and you've done what you can, you kind of just have to sit back in a jacuzzi and just kind of watch the grass grow. And it kind of does its thing, and it'll self-heal, it'll protect, it'll do whatever it needs to. And so, that's the reality of the turf industry as a whole that we need to do a better job of getting across. Yeah, it's still not going to work. And it's something that whenever I think if you have female and just women and you're wanting to get them into the turf industry, that's what you're gonna have to go back to. It's not guys golfing. It's guys growing things. It's people putting stuff in soil and watching it grow and really pushing it to the limits of what it can do. So in order to get women exposed into the industry, you really do have to start very, very young. And so these are gonna be either through youth clinics, youth field days, but focus more on the maintenance side of things instead of necessarily on the golf side of things. I got told at a young age that I would never be able to be a golfer because I had boobs. And that was by a gym teacher in like elementary school or something like that. That's what I was told. It's great to see the industry is highlighting female membership. And if you haven't seen it, it's a YouTube video that I want to say it was the PGA put it out on their YouTube channel, but it's Michelle Wee. whenever she really got going and she finally won her championship. And it's a great little story. And after, listening to some of this, you may watch it again and see some of those little ticks of misogyny that still exist. Because there are some that are mentioned, and it's just kind of off the cuff and it just kind of goes on through. But the USGA is highlighting female scholarships and female players. Social media is a huge thing. Getting women in golf as a hashtag has definitely taken on its own little life. A little less so now because of COVID, but it was definitely there. Whether it be on Instagram or it be on Twitter. But as a woman, one of the biggest things that I have to worry about personally is parenthood. And for whatever reason, there's this idea that parenthood should signal the possible end of a woman's career, which, Michelle Wie is 30, and she's currently pregnant. If you follow her on Instagram, she's got lots of cute little baby bump pictures. She's only about 6 months along. And, she was even asked by Golf World, is this going to be the end of your pro career? I mean, who thinks about retiring at 30? You would never ask a guy that. They all go and do the senior PGA, and it's not a big deal. And they keep playing golf forever. But for whatever reason, for women, it is a big deal. And so you have to question, are these articles chasing young girls away from the industry at a very early age? It would turn me off, absolutely, to going into turfgrass if I knew that, if I have a family, I can't be in turf. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. And so if we look at another male-dominated field, Marissa Mayer, whenever she had her twins and she had left for 2 weeks of maternity leave, this is an industry where hyper-aggressiveness works really well. And she only took 2 weeks off after she had twins. An insanely short amount of time to repair your body after giving birth and going through all of those changes, but she did it, and that's how she wanted to roll. So major opportunities that we have within turf, they're easy to identify. They really do abound. In research, at Oklahoma State, we have more female graduate students in our graduate program, in horticulture at least, than we do men. At the C5 meeting in November, John, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but women made approximately 40% of the group. Beth, who's a past CSSA president, she's a Road Endowed professor at Auburn. She's also an Oklahoma State alum. Is kind of a workhorse within it. She was the president of our national society, hugely respected within the C5 group. Awesome individual to chat with if you've ever worked with her. And so, within research, women are fairly well represented. Do I think we're going to end up with 60% women to 40% men? Probably not, just because of the nature of the work. But, I think 40 to 60 is a pretty good ratio, to be honest. Industry, really hard to get numbers on these, but, 70 to 80% male, I think would be kind of on the bottom of a guess. Roadside, 95% male. Sod production is probably 90% male as far as the face. But like I said, sod production is much more family-based. A lot of husband-wife teams, son-daughter teams going on there. And so it's a little bit difficult to really look at sod and be able to compare it with either the turf industry as private, or academia or roadside environments. So more and more golf courses are allowing female membership, and it really is a very, very small number. I can probably count it on my hands and toes, the number of golf courses that do not allow women membership. We're also seeing more female announcers. More female players are being highlighted on a continual basis. The Kapalua Wahine, which I probably butchered pronunciation on, that golf course is geared specifically towards women. Now, the plantation side is geared towards, more tournament and traditional style of play and kind of that big membership grow. But the Wahine is specifically designed for women play in mind. There are a growing number of female GCSAA members. I think the count is at 175. I don't know if that's been updated, out of 18,000 individuals. And so if you look at this tweet, how many women are part of your golf course turf department team, we're looking at 0 to 10%. And I wish that 0 had been its own category and then you could get 1 to 10 because it would have been skewed very, very differently, I think. But, you know, as John alluded to, we don't really have that many women who want to come through turf programs. There's not really that many opportunities for women to be hired. And whenever you were scrolling, or at least I scrolled through the comments, it wasn't so much that every superintendent that was on there that commented was basically stating, it wasn't that they were opposed to hiring female workers. It was just that there were none to be hired. But, you know, that's changing a lot. So for my opportunities are what you make of them. The effort may look incredibly daunting, but trust me, the rewards are going to be enormous. What you put in will be returned to you 2, 3, 4, 5 times on the back end. And unfortunately, you may not even realize the opportunity exists until it's already passed. I've had lots of opportunities slip through my fingers that people kept screaming at me was an opportunity. And I looked at them and, you know, whatever, and kind of moved on with life. You know, and I regret some of those now. Some of them not so much, but some of them I definitely do. My official position within Oklahoma State University is that of a staff member and not faculty. I do not have an appointment. And it's really important to tell you that because of it does go into my own calculus. I haven't left yet because of my own mathematics that I have to work in my head. My husband and I got married. We celebrated our year anniversary last year, and now we're you know, financially prepared to be able to have a family. And we've already started, you know, trying to have a family. We've got ideas of things that we want to do, the nurseries and all that good jazz. With my position, I can start a family much more easily. I work 8 to 5. Yeah, I come home and I bring home reports, but I can do what I need to at home. It's not like on a golf course where, you know, 10 to 12 hours and you are glued to that golf course. You are growing something that cannot be moved around. You know, my husband has an incredible job. He's getting pay increases 5, 10% every single year. I definitely do not get that. But he has great pay. He has a great benefits package. The benefits of my job package are humongous. I have specific networking capabilities that I am still able to achieve whether or not I had a faculty or a staff position, because my boss wants me to do that and he knows that. And so he really pushes that and allows me to do it. My benefits package is greater than my monthly package. For me to move to a faculty position now would be, in theory, I wouldn't gain much financially compared to where I am now. And so my own calculus, it doesn't make sense to move into faculty. And that's kind of the same thing with, you know, do you want to move in from maintenance up to, you know, a superintendent or assistant superintendent, you know, and that's mathematics that you have to work out for yourself. But as I alluded to, things do continue to change. Media cover is changing. There's more co-ed tournaments and things of that nature. GCSAA is highlighting women a lot more. I wish it wasn't just International Women's Day that it happened. But you do see a lot more happening that's focused exclusively towards women. In fact, Bayer had a Women in Turf conference not that long ago. I want to say it was in November because I had another conference to go to at the time. But individually, the hardest things that I've had to face as a woman in turf, besides some of the things that I've already kind of alluded to as, you know, don't ruin your manicure. The hardest challenges are those that I gave myself. You know, a great drinking game to have would be never have I ever. Never have I ever felt lesser because of my gender. When working with a superintendent, his or her crew in golf, sod, sports, or home lawns. I've just never approached that. I've never had that happen in academia as well. I've had people challenge me on an academic level, but I didn't take it up to misogyny. It's just, you know, that's academics. And that's how we banter with one another. The only time I have ever had myself think lesser of myself simply because of my gender, it was actually by individual golfers. And that's where I get it the most. And once I had a golfer think that I was a waitress on the course during a consult, and the super was standing right next to me. And we were chit-chatting. And I was clearly not dressed as the drinks lady. You know, I've had that happen to me. And it's those little things, and you just kind of look at it and just kind of like, you know, sometimes people are just buttholes is kind of the only way to look at it. And so how do I view being a woman in turf? You know, in general, I'm excited. There's lots of new graduates. There are boatloads of opportunities, and really there's too many to count. You have to get out, you have to get involved, you have to push to show what turf management is and it isn't. And I think we have to kind of move away from this whole golf mentality. Like, golf is golf management, and it's really not. And we kind of have to push to show that 90s perception, if you recall that book, isn't really true anymore. We are not dainty flowers. I will go and dig through dirt and grass and, you know, rip sod out with my fingernails, which I have done. And it's not that big of a deal, you know. And now, you know, here, you know, Dr. Fontanier, who's Oklahoma State University, Chrissy Seegers from Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, she got her PhD at Oklahoma State University. You know, they're side by side giving a professional talk. You know, one is not larger than the other in that industry. And in that slideshow. And that's kind of, you know, some of the stuff that we're seeing because of COVID is more of these webinars. But this is the last slide. And I just want to highlight some of kind of the hashtag women in turf, whether it be on Twitter or Instagram. And these are just individuals. You know, great article to read from Golf Course Magazine, A Save Situation. And I'm not even attempting to pronounce that golf course's name because I would butcher it for those who actually do know how to pronounce it. But, you know, there are a lot of women in turf right now, whether you follow @Women in Turf or you follow Golf Course Supers. There's a few assistant supers. There's some people in sports field too. I know for me, I am a huge Michelle Wee fan and have been for quite some time. And so, of course, I follow her on Instagram. But I do want to leave on this slide. So if anybody wants to copy those down or find anybody to follow on Twitter or Instagram, those notes are up there. And with that one, you guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Penn State, for, you know, the invitation to be able to do this. Thank you, John, for pushing me to do this, because it's always nice to have a push to do some of these professional engagements. And I guess with that, I don't know how much time we have.
No, we're fine. We do have a couple questions, so I wanted to be able to address those, but awesome presentation. I bounced out a couple times because my internet kept dropping on me, but I'm glad that we stayed recording and things were going well. But really, really good presentation. Let me get to a couple of the questions. Anthony said he knows you became interested in the field at the age of 8. And he said he may have missed it, I guess. He said, what caused that interest? Do you have any barriers from friends or family because of your interest in the field?
Well, my interest in the field in 8th grade was as a scientist in general. In 8th grade, I knew I wanted to get my PhD, and I knew I wanted to work in pathogens. Not so much turf. Turf side of it actually happened by accident because I didn't want to work in human epidemiology and more, and wanted to work in something else where, you know, if you kill something, it's not quite as big a deal. In fact, they may be the outcome of interest that you're looking for. And so, you know, I can run out to a greenhouse and get ratings that I need to get. Getting surveys returned to you is a little bit harder from the human side. You have to shell out a lot of money. About half of your grant, let's say you get a $500,000 grant. Depending on the grant, anywhere between 20 to 40% of that grant's lost due to overhead to the university immediately. And so just for math's sake, it's $500,000 grant, a quarter of it gets lost. Another quarter of that is going to get lost because of people. You need to pay people in order to participate in your surveys because there is a financial incentive that you have to give. That's 50% of your grant is gone, and you're left with, you know, $250,000. And that was stress that I really didn't feel like dealing with. And so I could still be an epidemiologist. Damon Smith, it was actually right after Damon started at OSU that I got started in his lab. And I became a plant disease epidemiologist. And that was, working first in pecans. And then I decided that I didn't want to sit in a cherry picker much longer. And I would like to keep my feet on the ground a little bit more. And honestly, it was, I want to work where I can wear flip-flops to work. And that is considered professional attire, because I need to be able to take my flip-flops off and, squish my feet in the grass and see, if I had a dry spot or not. And that's really where it came in from, is just kind of being thrown into it and realizing that I really did have a passion in turfgrass. And I love my job. I get to wear shorts and flip-flops to work. Like, who gets to do that?
We had another question. Deborah Cox said she not heard of any women's turf event equivalent to that of the bear event that was held in the USA. Being held in the UK, does anybody, and anybody that's in here, if they know of it, does anybody know of any info on that, or is there any push? Andrew, you might not know whether they're going to, in the UK, start to do that. I think it would be.
It would be harder in the UK though, because that mentality of male-only golfing is a little bit stronger, especially in Scotland. If you look at the number of golf courses where they ban women in Scotland, it's a lot higher than what it is in the United States, for sure. Mostly, I think the British Open kind of has their own little limited number of golf courses that they kind of go around, whereas in the US we kind of, we've got the Masters Tour, which is pretty done, but you can apply, like the Ryder's Cup will go wherever. The US Open has a tendency to move around a little bit, but not too much. So that may just be a part of it, is there just been a stronger push in the US for those in the golf industry. But as far as the Bayer group equivalent, having anything like that in the UK, or even in France or even Germany, where Bayer is headquartered, I haven't heard of anything outside of that.
I don't know how many female people in turf there are in the UK. Obviously I know they're there. I know plenty of people, but maybe it's the same percentage, I don't know. And there's also 15,000 golf courses and a lot more space in terms of turf management in the US. So there might be more of a push. But I mean, how many people went to the Women in Turf event at GIS? I think there were like,
it wasn't many.
No, I thought the last one was like pretty good, like the happy hour one that you talked about.
Okay. I know that I couldn't go.
Oh, I know. You were talking about the one that you went to, like a wine bar. I didn't go to that one, but there was like
the one at Tri-Society. Yeah, we had.
Yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking. Tri-Society.
Yeah, the one that Beth put on was, we probably had about 40 some odd people, and that was just at Tri-Society. And granted, a lot of it were students, and how many of those students will stay in turf? That's a question mark. But we had a lot of early professionals in turf at that meeting, at that, wine bar get together. But as far as kind of the Bayer thing, from what I understand, there were only about 20 to 30, but it was by invitation only. And you had to fill out this whole application. I filled it out and I was not selected, but it was kind of a good thing, because I had a roadside national meeting that I had to go to that week, so I wouldn't have been able to go anyways. But I think it was geared more towards supers and assistant supers is what they were gearing that meeting to. I don't know, it'd be something to push Bayer to have in Germany and fly people. It's not like flying from the UK to Germany is that big of a deal.
Except maybe right now.
Well, slight limitations.
Tina asked, because it's a good question actually, she said, what's the ratio of men to women joining the seminar? And I don't know exactly, because some people have bounced out, but when I went and looked, I think there's like 8 or 9 people in the participant section, and I think like 6 or 7 of them are women. So like, right, the women want to come in and listen to you, Andrea, talk about what's going on, but then we don't have a huge showing of men, although, we'll put it on YouTube and hopefully people watch it. But I mean, I think it's incredibly important to try to have men understand the issue, right? Like you put your first slide up and I'm like, man, those quotes are crazy. It just makes me want to cry. I mean, it's just like so sick to think of.
And I got that from an entire article, and John, I might have find it and I'll email it to you so you can email it out to everybody.
Sure.
But it's a really good article that just kind of highlights some of the stuff, and you're like, why would you say In what realm do you think it's okay? I mean, Fox and Friends has, Brian Kilmeade has always said he has got some doozies, but he always gets a slap on the wrist, and it's not that big of a deal, so he keeps doing it. Ayla got hit hard with his statement, because I even want to say that her husband even came up and was like, "Don't ever say that about my wife again. She doesn't care about a new kitchen. She's got a great kitchen. Who cares? She doesn't even cook that much," or something along those lines.
Right.
And so, part of it, there needs to be more pushback from the industry whenever you do have comments like that. Like, no, that's $100,000 fine. End of story. Something a little bit more serious. I doubt it's going to happen, but it is what it is.
It's just a slow process to get.
Yeah.
I feel like in some situations we're going backwards in this country with that process. But so James Hemfling's in here, and he had a great question that I actually had written down. And at first he said, "Great presentation, Andrea." And they said, "What are 3 things men can start doing today to confront bias and stereotypes and support our female colleagues in the turf industry?" And you might not have 3 things, but what are some things that we can do?
I think the big one's going to be inclusiveness. And whenever you ask questions, don't always highlight your female employee, but definitely, because for some people in general, and it's not just women, but people in general, if they're in a situation where they are the vast minority, they don't always speak up. John, I have 0 problem speaking up. Stick me in 500 people. If I have a question, I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to ask the question no matter how stupid that question is, because I have it. And so for me, kind of swan diving into a male-dominated field is not a big deal for me. For some it is. And I think for those individuals where it is, you just have to be a good manager and identify those individuals and kind of force them to be inclusive. Ask them their opinion. If let's say you've got a disease coming up and you need help identifying, I don't know, a new fungicide rotation, I don't know. Ask that person and say, "Hey, we just applied this. What's fungicide would you like to apply next? Or, how would you like to approach this problem? Or, hey, we've got to do this. What would you like to do?" I mean, it could be little things just to kind of open somebody up to it. I've been told by faculty, and this is probably, honestly, this is a true assessment of me, that I speak too much. In class, I had professors, where I would answer the question. If nobody answered within 2-3 seconds, which, at graduate level courses, you would think that people aren't going to sit there and kind of twiddle their thumbs for a while, but they do. I don't like that. I want to move on. I don't like sitting there and twiddling my thumb and waiting for other people to answer, waiting for the professor to get the answer that they want. I have been told by professors not to do that. Honestly, quit doing it. If you have other people that aren't speaking and you're not getting that turnout, just start asking questions and point to that person and say, "So-and-so, what do you think the answer is?" And force them to do that. One of my faculty members at Tulane was literally the scariest person I have ever met in my entire life. One of maybe 2 people that will actually intimidate me in life. And at 6'4", there's not much that intimidates me. She did. But that's what she did in class. She would ask these really nasty questions that would get you on your toes, point to you, and everybody be furiously writing notes, because God forbid if you made eye contact, we thought it was worse. And you would definitely get called on. And so you'd give your answer. You thought it was well thought out. You studied. You were on top of your notes. And she'd look at you and she'd, pay attention while you were talking, and then she'd, stop. Wrong. And she would give you the correct answer. And it was incredibly intimidating. It was horrible. But that was kind of, epidemiology is a female-dominated field. Out of a class of 40, I think there were 4 guys in total. And so, kind of reverse on that one, but that's how she got male participation. or made sure that the guys didn't take over the class in a female dominated. You kind of have to force that narrative a little bit more whenever you know that you have people that are outnumbered. I don't know, and that's kind of, you know, beer and burgers also helps. Nobody will turn down beer and burgers.
No, definitely not. Somebody said, there's another question. They said, I've had guys try to do jobs for me because it's chivalrous. What do you think the best way to
shove that?
Yeah, she said, what's the best way to, well, there's your answer. She said, what's the best way to handle that situation?
You know, be a little bit more courteous than I was just now. But, you know, you're at a job, you know, it's great if, you know, whenever I have people that open the doors for me, you know, yeah, I like it. I'm not going to say no to it, because it is kind. But you're on a work site. Things are a little bit different. If you have guys that are trying to do stuff for you, no, thank you, but no, thank you, I got it. You know, and if it continues to be an issue, you know, you kind of have to go up the rank and just be like, I understand that you're trying to be nice, but I got it. This is my job and you're not going to do my job for me, no matter how nice you think you are. Because, I mean, really, it's kind of back to that. They're trying to help and they're not really helping anybody. Kind of thing that you have to look out for. I don't know.
Yeah, you mentioned the door holding thing, and like that's just something I've done for anybody. I don't care if you're a woman or a man. Like if I see somebody coming, I like hold the door. Now I don't.
I do it for guys.
Stay 6 feet away. But normally, like I do that, and I've had people say like, I got it. I don't need you to hold the door, and I'm like, all right, whatever your preference is. Like I'm not going to argue with you, but like I'm not giving you preferential treatment. But you know, I think there's just a lot of people that have different opinions on like how far to go on things.
Yeah,
you know,
especially like the door holding.
Yeah.
The door holding thing has kind of become kind of where we stand on that one, to be honest. You know, I like it, you know, but you know, at the same time, I don't want my husband running around the car in order to open the door for me to get out of the car. On that one, I'm just kind of like, sweetie, you know, I got it. You know, except for whenever I broke my arm last year, different matter entirely. That was quite nice whenever he would do that. But you know, holding a door open for somebody is not really, I don't view it as a positive or a negative. To me, it's just, I'm holding a door open for somebody. You know, I open doors for guys and it's just not a big deal. I'll open doors for kids. I open doors for moms that have, you know, a kid in one arm and a purse in the other. It's just something nice to be done.
It's
but
just
you know,
common courtesy, I think. It's not
I would
really
think so.
A sex-based decision. It's a, you know.
But like I said, I do it for guys, I do it for girls, I do it for people who are older than me. You know, it's just, I just open up doors for people and it's not a big deal. But you know, it's very different whenever somebody is trying to complete a job or task for you at work because of chivalry.
Yes.
And shove it. Be a little bit more courteous than that, but I mean, that's the statement that goes through my head is, yeah, you're going to get credit for this one, buddy, and enjoy completing that task and not. So.
Well, we're a little over time, but it's been awesome. I'm going to turn it over to Kyle and have him kind of wrap us up. I will say this, any link that you can send me, like the link to that Michelle Wee YouTube video, or you said there was an article. If you send me any links, I'll put them when we load this up to the YouTube channel. I'll put them in the description section so that people can get access to those.
Yeah, that Michelle Wee is really, it's a great one. It's, you know, you can listen to it at work. It's not a big deal, but it's a really good one. I'm glad it was on the PGA's, not the LPGA, but the PGA's YouTube page. So it's a good one. But yeah, I'll send those along.
I'm gonna let you wrap us up here.
Dr. Payne Connally, thank you very much for you know, speaking to the club and speaking to everybody that's been a part of this. And with that being said, I don't know if you saw my tweet earlier, but I caught you in the middle of your presentation. I did the hashtag Women in Turf just to kind of re-up that. When with that being said, I remember when I was at the Sports Turf Conference in the GIS, that hashtag was really relevant, and I saw that going around a lot this January and February. And
yeah, I think COVID kind of put a damper on it being used just because there's not as many. I think a lot of your guys' golf courses are shut down right now too, aren't they? I know not many of ours are because we're in the South and it's nice and you're not going to keep golfers away in the South, but most of your guys' golf courses I think are shut down right now.
Yeah, a lot of maintenance is going on. They're starting to open up. They just opened up New York yesterday or the day before. I don't remember. But they're slowly rolling open, I think.
I think Oklahoma City is still closed as the publicly owned. The OKC Parks and Rec are still closed. But all the privately owned, they considered it a form of exercise, which, I mean, it is. I mean, if you walk your 18 holes, it's definitely, a form of exercise. But that's kind of how Oklahoma's viewing it, is you can get outside, you can definitely social distance. I think tee times are getting widened a little bit so that there's, you don't have anybody trying to play through, and helping also with, golf cart damage. Although I did love your golf cart tweet the other day, John. That was funny. That was great. But no, thank you so much, Kyle, for having this and for hosting these. I think they're great. In this time and age, it's definitely great. And, it allows, you guys to get a little bit more flavor, in your program. And, if you only had these in-person meetings, I kind of hope you guys keep doing this in the future. I kind of like it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, thank you very much. And hopefully maybe one time we'll get you to State College to do another presentation in person. So with that being said, thank you everybody for joining, and I hope everybody's staying healthy. Dr. Kaminsky, Dr. Payne Connally, thank you again very much for being a part of this and helping to host this. And we'll see you guys on Thursday.